Hello. I'm Stevenson. I hail from these Treaty 6 territories, and I'm a very proud born and raised Edmontonian. So I'm excited to be here today talking to you about something that through my years of experience, I've come to see as one of the most important things in our cities that can transform the type of urban areas that we live in. The humble parking space. It probably seems unintuitive that something as mundane as a car storage area could vastly shape our city spaces, but they absolutely do. How walkable our neighborhoods are, how affordable our housing is, how we choose to get around, it all comes down to the parking spot. This story goes back a century to when Henry Ford decided to build a car for the great multitude. He wanted every family in Canada to own their very own vehicle. And the rise of the car was happening at the same time as something else monumental in Canada, and that was urbanization. So in 1910, 70% of England's population was urbanized, and they had about 100,000 cars in the whole country. By the time Canada was 70% urbanized, it was 1961, and there were 4.3 million cars in the country. So the rise of the city was inextricably linked with the rise of the car. So New York City's Robert Moses took that car-first mentality and famously said that cities are for traffic. He designed the city to serve the car, including dedicating huge amounts of land to parking space. And Moses wasn't alone. By the 1970s, most cities in Canada required that a minimum number of parking spaces be provided with new buildings. So this seems logical. You're building a new building, people are going to be driving there, so of course you provide spaces for them. But trying to figure out what that right number is incredibly tricky because of such a diversity of businesses and homes across the city. So for an example, picture two stores, both of them selling donuts. One of them is a mom and pop store, and one of them is a Tim Hortons. If you choose a single parking rate, it's going to be way too much for one and probably not enough for the other. And so this is just donuts. Imagine trying to plan for the vast diversity of businesses and homes that we have in a city. This is exactly what this 1973 study tried to do. This was commissioned by the city of Edmonton quite a while ago. So in 1973, we had about half the population we do today. The LRT wasn't going to open for another 5 years, and there was very little development beyond the White Mud or the Yellowhead. So this study started by looking at the average car ownership rates by household. This is shown in the dotted line. One might assume that they would look at the average and base a parking requirement on that. But instead, they went with that solid line at the top. So they more than doubled the average need that they were observing for car parking spaces. And by that handwriting, April 9th, 1974, that study was incorporated into our zoning bylaw. And these numbers, some of these numbers you see here, are exactly the same numbers that we're using today to design our parking spaces and for our minimum requirements. So for this crowd, that's a long time ago. Parking fundamentally shapes our city. It stretches things out. It makes it further to walk from one place to another. It also affects how we get around. If there's more parking, we typically drive more through induced demand. And I hate to break the news, but there is absolutely no such thing as free parking. Providing parking means buying more land or building underground parkades, and a single space costs about $50,000. This vastly increases the cost of our homes and makes it harder for businesses to open. In the worst case, we spend all this money and we get empty spaces. A lot of our parking requirements are for peak demand. So that's like Boxing Day at the mall. What peak demand means is that for the other 364 days a year, you have lots of empty spaces. And this is instead of green space or other community amenities. Unfortunately, there are no easy answers when it comes to parking. You've probably heard of the adage, it can be fast, cheap, or good. Pick two. It's the exact same thing with parking. We can have abundant parking, we can have walkable neighborhoods, we can have affordable construction for our homes and neighborhoods, but we absolutely cannot do all three at once. So when we combine affordable construction and abundant parking, we end up with something like this. So it's great, there's lots of usually very easy to find a parking spot, but as you can see, the houses are pretty far away from the shops, And just overall, driving is going to be, you're going to have to drive further for your daily chores. Conversely, if we combine affordable construction and walkable neighborhoods, we end up with something like this. So homes and businesses are closer together. There will still be parking, but probably not right in front of your destination, and you might have to pay for it too. In the third scenario, we combine walkable neighborhoods and abundant parking, and we get something like this. So homes and businesses are very close together, super walkable, but it's incredibly expensive, or more expensive, with all the underground parking. And you, again, are usually having to pay for the parking that you're using. My team at the city is working to balance these trade-offs as we go to update our 1973 parking requirements. So as part of this, we're collecting utilization data of how much parking is being used in Edmonton. We're also trying to understand how technologies like automated vehicles and car share are going to fundamentally change our parking needs. Most importantly, though, we really want to understand where you as Edmontonians want to go with this. So we have a survey out now that asks you these questions. How do we make these trade-offs? So you can take it now at edmonton.ca/makingspace. And please do, by November 19th. So the next time you're circling the block looking for a parking space, I just want you to remember that parking isn't just something that's there waiting for you at your destination. It's actually a fundamental force that will determine where we're going as a city. Thank you so much.